Hi guys, today I'll continue to discuss the Osirion, the mysterious underground structure in Abydos, Egypt, which is mostly submerged underwater. In my last video, I proposed that the Osirion was a megalithic water collecting facility, which is a well and a cistern combination. Its location was strategically planned as it connects to several water sources, including deeper paleowater aquifers. The Osirion has an unusual layout with a wraparound 15-meter deep, over 2-meter wide water channel, which isolates the central island and prevents people from entering any niches or the antechamber. Currently, long wooden boards are used to bridge the water channel for tourists. Without these modern additions, visitors would have no access beyond the front traverse hall. This means the Osirion was not designed for regular human usage, as it basically has no circulation path. The fact that the Osirion is subterranean with a 15-meter deep shaft, which is 5 stories, dug into the sand, which connects with various aquifers, indicates that it was designed to collect water. If that's the case, then can it explain the structure's unique features, such as the super heavy pillars and a long entree corridor? Why are the Osirion pillars much chunkier than those of the Kafris Valley Temple? What were those symmetrically placed small niches intended for? How is the Osirion water different from the water of nearby wells? What can we learn from these differences? Is there anything new or overlooked about the Osirion that can help us to study the site? Additionally, James Westermann discovered a temperature anomaly in the west channel of the Osirion. The water inside 2 piezometers was 10 degrees centigrade, 18 degrees Fahrenheit, warmer than water surrounding the piezometers. What could be the cause of that? In this video, I'll share my thoughts and findings. Let's start with this. In which ways does the Osirion water differ from that of nearby wells? And can it support the hypothesis that the Osirion was a reservoir facility? In my prior video, I referenced scientific reports which analyzed the water samples from the Osirion and nearby water sources. These published results collectively indicate that the water within the Osirion has unique characteristics, atypical of other waters included in the present Abydos dataset. A 2022 paper found that the Osirion water is a mixture of 3 different types of water: Old Nile water before the construction of the Aswan High Dam in 1970, recent Nile water after the construction of the High Dam, and paleo water from deeper aquifers. A 2015 paper provided data based on weekly surface water and groundwater level monitoring, physical, chemical, biological, and isotope analysis of groundwater samples. Here are the results of the waters obtained from the Osirion, its nearby 5 drilled wells, and the Nile, which is 11 kilometers or 6.8 miles away. The physical analysis of the water samples within the Osirion area detected that among the samples collected during the same period, the Osirion water had the lowest TDS and EC, which stand for total dissolved solids and electrical conductivity respectively, and the highest pH level. The ideal pH range for potable water is between 6.5 and 8.5. The Osirion water was just a bit higher, and the 2011 data was within the benign range. TDS and EC are both direct reflections of total ionic content. TDS affects water quality and taste. For palatability, the desirable level is less than 600 milligrams per liter, with the maximum contaminant level being 1,000 milligrams per liter. Water with TDS above 1200 is generally considered unacceptable. The Osirion water was within the acceptable range. On this aspect, water from well 2 is the closest to the Osirion, and as we see, distance-wise, well 2 is also the closest. For the chemical analysis of these water samples, again, in general, the Osirion water contained less minerals compared to most nearby wells. It has lower calcium, sodium, magnesium, bicarbonates, and chlorine. The 2011 and 2015 data of the Osirion water have notable deviations, especially on potassium, CO3, and NO3. Perhaps these high readings were due to temporary conditions. Well 3, another close well to Osirion, has low readings too. Finally, The microbiological analysis shows that the Osirian water had a much lower total coliform and fecal coliform bacteria than any other well water. This means the Osirian water, despite looking murky, is actually much cleaner than those of the surrounding wells. Once more, well 2 had the closest microbiological quality with the Osirian, followed by well 3. Groundwater at west of the Osirian appears to be of better quality. Please note that the groundwater sampled in drilled wells is naturally filtered by the earth and sand that holds it. That's typically cleaner than surface water. Well, the Osirian is a large pool of open water. There's a ton of random debris in the channel. Birds hang out there, as do tourists, who frequently visit, which means it is exposed to more pollutants and contaminants. But somehow its water is remarkably cleaner and less brackish than nearby wells, with much less bacteria and minerals. How could this be? It seems that the Osirian has cleaner water intake sources than nearby groundwater, and some built-in, long-lasting mechanisms that filter and clean its water. It's amazing that such a filtration system still functions in some capacity after thousands of years. Osirian might have sand filters, which can effectively remove sediments and bacteria from water. But sand filters cannot remove dissolved salts or minerals, and they need regular backwash to maintain functionality. The Osirian filtering process works better than sand filters, which points to a more complex and superior system. The analysis and comparison study of the water samples suggests that the Osirian is indeed special, as it not only collects water from various sources, but also can filter and clean the collected water within its structure. The Osirian design is quite ingenious, being a combination of a well, a cistern reservoir, and a water treatment facility. To research the methods Osirian utilized to purify its water, we need to examine the whole structure, especially the submerged part, which connects to aquifers. Seismic scans found that the depth of the island in the center of Osirian extends to approximately 15 meters down into the sand. This island was also determined to not be solid masonry, but rather to contain voids or other irregularities, possibly relating to the water treatment system. Unfortunately, till this day, Osirian has never been completely dewatered and investigated, since each time people try to pump the water out, even pumping at 500 gallons per minute, new water gushed in from the bottom and eventually outperformed the pumping efforts. We have no idea what kind of secrets were buried underneath all this water. Nonetheless, these explorations did offer some interesting clues, which are rarely talked about. I'll show you 3 of them that caught my eye. First thing is that the walls enclosing the Osirian are extremely thick, documented to be 6 meters, 20 feet thick, and composed of sandstone. This means the thickness of the Osirian outer walls is equivalent to the height of a 2-story building. This ultra-fortified, heavy enclosure wall ought to be labor-intensive to construct. Hence its presence signifies structural necessity. Extremely thick masonry walls are used primarily for structural support. They can increase structural integrity, thermal performance, waterproofing, and environmental durability. In the 1925-26 season, Henry Frankfurt drained the water in the east channel of the Osirian down to a level of 3.8 meters below the central island, and cleared all debris in the east channel in parts down to greater than 5 meters below the island. The team then uncovered 2 thrust beams, 1.1 meters thick and 1.25 meters wide, connecting the island to the east wall. The top of these beams were 4.15 meters below the island. This is the second important structural discovery, as it proves that a seemingly isolated central island is secured and integrated with the thick enclosure walls. Needless to say, such beams probably exist at other parts in the water channel too. Therefore, besides the original stone roofs, there are also stone beams joining the central island to the enclosure walls. In 2008 and 2010, James Westerman and his team did borehole drillings at the Osirian. One was done outside the Osirian at the southeastern scarp overlooking the channel. This drill reached a depth of 22 meters before hitting the hard Isavia limestone, which is about 15 meters deep if measured from the central island. Another 3 boreholes were drilled inside the western part of the channel. They reached approximately 6 meters in the channel before recovering Isavia limestone fragments. It's now known if the limestone encountered is the fallen pieces lodged in the channel or from other sources. In contrast, 5 test wells were drilled west of the Osirion, down to a depth of 70 plus meters and one down to 103 meters. In all cases, they did not encounter any rock formation and only brought up Kina sand and Kamamba conglomerate. This agrees with the ground-penetrating radar and seismic scan results of the area, that there are no natural rock formation around the Osirion. Westerman and geologist Dr. Bahi Isavi concluded that the hard limestone pulled up from the drills at the Osirion, along with the general sand clay section, were used as the foundation for this magnificent structure. So, the Osirion has in fact a limestone foundation. Further, this foundation extends outward from the enclosure wall because the drill right outside the Osirion on the southeast scarp hit the limestone at 22 meters down below. Such wider and larger foundations are often designed for stability and moisture protection. These 3 structural features, the 6-meter thick enclosure walls, the thrust beams, and large limestone foundation, along with the 50-ton each granite pillars on the central island and the surviving roof stones, jointly display that the Osirion was designed to be very solid, stable, and load-bearing. The enormous sizes of its stone elements strongly imply they were meant to support and/or counter substantial loads and pressure. Some might say that the oversized pillars and uber-thick stone walls were to support a heavy roof and overburden sitting on top. That could be part of the reason, but there is a lot more to the story. Please don't forget that the majority of the Osirion is buried in sand and permanently submerged underwater. Such a subterranean water-containing cistern needs to support the hydrostatic pressure, plus any external overburden pressure above it. This pressure depends on the depth of the cistern, the weight of the water, and the type and density of the surrounding soil. In Osirion's case, the surrounding sand. The Osirion construction must deal with all the structural challenges that might occur, including the hydrostatic pressure and buoyancy. Hydrostatic pressure, the force exerted by a fluid at rest, can cause major problems for concrete cisterns. This pressure comes from groundwater or stored water pushing against the cistern's walls or floor. There are 2 main situations where hydrostatic pressure is critical. The outside or external hydrostatic pressure when the cistern is empty or low, but the groundwater outside is high. Pressure from the outside pushes inward and upward. This can lead to wall failure, tilting, uplift, cracking, or shifting of the floor slab. Then there is the internal hydrostatic pressure. When the cistern is full of water, the water inside pushes outward on the walls and downward to the base. The hydrostatic pressure exerted by the water within the cistern increases with the depth of the water. If the structure is not well reinforced or watertight, this can result in leaks, wall bulging, cracking, and even structural failure. As a comp to Osirion, modern subterranean cistern design in sandy regions concerns both sinking and uplifting or buoyancy of a concrete cistern. While preventing cistern uplift or flotation is generally more critical than preventing sinking, because sinking is usually manageable with proper compaction and a stable foundation such as a concrete slab, which we now know that the Osirion has, which would offer sufficient bearing capacity to support the weight of the cistern. On the other hand, buoyancy is a significant consideration in the design and installation of underground cisterns, particularly in areas with high water tables. If the buoyancy force is greater than the weight of the cistern and any ballast, the additional weight added to counteract buoyancy, the cistern can be lifted out of the ground and float. This is especially problematic for large cisterns or those in areas with high water tables. When a cistern tank gets pushed upwards, this can end in displacement, rupture, or disconnection from connecting pipes. That's why modern underground cisterns are required to be properly weighted down and anchored to counteract uplift forces. This is either done by adding ballast to the cistern to increase its overall weight, or to use specialized anchors like deadman anchors or concrete hold-on pads to provide additional downward force and prevent movement. With this information in mind, let's go back to Osirian. The ancient structure is connected to multiple water sources, underground aquifers, and possibly modern one channels. To effectively function as a large water collecting and treating facility, its structure, elevation, and position need to be very robust, sturdy, stable, and unfluctuating, so it can maintain its placement and keep connecting to underground channels and aquifers. It also must have sufficient weight to counter the serious buoyancy forces the steep and large cistern would experience. Therefore, I propose the following. The chunky pillars, which weigh 50 tons each on the central island, are not just to support the stone roof on top, but more importantly, to add additional weight to the cistern to prevent flotation. The hard limestone foundation, which extends out of the Osirian footprint, would work well as a strong foundation to prohibit sinking. The 6-meter, 20 feet thick outer stone walls were made exceptionally robust to withstand the external and internal hydrostatic pressures against the cistern's walls, and might double as a waterproofing barrier. The joining thrust beams between the enclosure walls and the central island are to distribute loads and pressures, hence improving the building's structural integrity. As for the long corridor leading to the Osirian, it's cut into the marl rock, which sits on top of the sand. Records say it's 123 meters long and 2.5 meters wide, with a ceiling height of about 3 meters. At the corridor's end, there is an additional chamber. Henry Frankfurt measured and estimated the corridor slopes down to the south by around 10 feet, which means this corridor has a 2.4% slope. Cisterns always have stairs for people to get to the water and to do maintenance work. But this long-sloped corridor would have been extremely excessive, unnecessary, and inconvenient for these uses. As a comparison, current accessibility ramp slopes range from 5% to 8.3%. The 2.4% Osirian corridor slope is rather close to today's recommended 2% slope for most residential drainage pipes, which ensures proper water flow and prevents clogs. Since the corridor starts on the ground level and goes down in 2.4% slope into the subterranean Osirian, I think it might have been a drainage and a ventilation channel to direct surface runoff into the cistern. The chamber at the end of the corridor might be ancient versions of sealing basin or expansion chamber, the extra space placed at the turns of water drainage channels, which helps slow down water flow, reduce turbulence, and allow sediments to settle before flowing into the cistern. The 16 small niches around the central island are about 6 feet high, with 4 large courses of masonry blocks on top, which were covered with roof stones. The size and volume of these niches are inconsequential compared with the big pillars, beams, thick walls, and large end chambers. So they would not be practical actual water storages or to serve a structural role. They would not work as water filtration rooms either, or they would have been under the usual water level instead of being above. What could be the point of creating these niches? Efflorescence can be found in the intact northwestern niches. Efflorescence is a white, powdery, and chalky deposit of salts that can appear on the surface of porous materials like concrete, brick, or stone. It forms when moisture carries water-soluble salts from within the building material to the surface, and then the water evaporates, leaving behind the salt deposits. Efflorescence is not a solution for purifying water as it doesn't directly address mineral content in water itself. Thus, these niches were not to remove mineral salts from water. Smaller areas can experience a higher concentration of moisture and salts, and are often more prone to efflorescence than larger areas. Small niches inside an underground cistern, like what we see at the Osirian, would naturally be prone to efflorescence. Why would ancient engineers design them? Efflorescence within a cistern is a strong indicator of potential leakage or seepage problems. This means water is moving through the cistern structure, possibly through cracks, porous areas, or weak joints. Efflorescence often appears before major structural damage occurs, allowing for timely repairs. Constructing small pockets in a cistern and monitoring efflorescence can be a useful way to spot early leakage or seepage issues. Could these evenly spaced niches on the enclosure walls have been a monitoring and early warning system, which provided visible cues of leaking and localized detection? Small niches can help pinpoint specific areas where seepage is happening. Besides, the presence of efflorescence can indicate how water is moving through the material, helping engineers assess the severity of the matter. Now, about the water temperature anomaly. James Westermann wrote in 2011 that he discovered a temperature anomaly in the west channel of the Osirian. The water inside two of the piezometers was 10 degrees centigrade, 18 degrees Fahrenheit, warmer than the water surrounding the piezometers. He questioned the cause of this and stated that it may be evidence of a new, unexplained natural phenomenon. Well, there have been other records on the Osirian and nearby well water temperatures, documented by Westermann himself, which paint a rather different picture. In 2004, Westermann's team measured the water temperatures all around the channel and found that the temperature readings were within 3 degrees Fahrenheit of each other throughout the entire canal. In 2010, Dr. Richard Parizak, who worked with Westermann, measured the water temperatures within the Osirian both under non-pumping and pumping conditions to identify potential areas of a concentrated groundwater inflow. Under both conditions, the water temperatures in the channel were not much different, within 2 degrees of each other. Slight lower temperature after pumping, which is predictable since the new incoming water from lower aquifers could be cooler. On April 29, 2010, the water temperature of the Osirian Central Island was 23.4 degrees Celsius, a tiny bit lower than the water temperature of the 23.6 degrees Celsius in the Roman well measured on the same day. 3 nearby wells outside the Osirian all have higher water temperatures than the Osirian, ranging from 1.9 to 4.7 degrees higher. The cooler water temperature of Osirian might have something to do with its subterranean status, with limited direct sunlight exposure, and one of its feeding waters comes from deeper, cooler paleowater aquifers. This data proves that certain area of the Osirian water does not consistently have much higher temperatures than surrounding water. The 2011 water temperature anomaly might just be a one-time fluke. As for how this anomaly arose, it's worth noting that piezometers have a sealed portion that can trap some heat. Holding a piezometer in your hand before or during testing water temperature can introduce body heat and distort the readings. Sunlight on piezometer casings, especially metal and dark-colored ones, can have a similar effect and cause temperature fluctuations. To prevent this, it's best to avoid direct contact and other heating sources with piezometer housing before taking the temperature readings. Also, a piezometer used to measure water temperature can potentially show higher reading if it's partially or fully embedded in sediments. I wonder if the two piezometers with 10-degree higher readings were triggered by improper handling of the instruments. So, my hypothesis on the Osirian is that it was a water collection and treatment facility. This can explain its structural features like the thick walls, heavy pillars, and its special layout like the long entree corridor and surrounding niches. It also works well with the water analyses, which show the Osirian water comes from mixed sources, including paleo water, and its water is surprisingly cleaner than nearby drilled wells, despite it being open and regularly visited by tourists. The alleged water temperature anomaly was a one-off thing, which might have been induced by mishandling of piezometers. What do you think? If you have any insights, please leave me a comment. If you like my video, please subscribe to my channel and share with others. You can also support me on Patreon, which is a monthly charge, or on Buy Me a Coffee. I appreciate your support. This is Curious Being. I'm Tina. Thanks for watching and see you next time.